What's going on, guys? My name is Tom, and for today's video I'm going to be talking about workout tips for us OI people, right? So this is going for all OI people, but me, I have type 3, and so that isn't as severe as others, but people can relate and they could learn something from this, right? So if you have a different type, you can still learn from me and put it into your lifestyle and see if it works or not, right? But when I began working out, I understood myself at first, meaning I knew my limits. I knew how weight works. I know how to handle myself, meaning I know how to bear weight. I know how to balance. I know everything like that, right? And so you gotta really know your limits, your limitations. So that includes your mobility, how far your joints could go back, or if you're good at moving your joints around, right? So for me personally, I have a left shoulder issue, and so I have a short range of motion compared to my right arm, and my right arm range of motion is much more greater than my left. And so from that, I have to avoid certain exercises or really improve on that point because um, that's a that's a factor that I have to take into account, and because it's easy, it's something that could easily get hurt or damaged, right? And so I'm going to be talking about that later down the road, but yeah, so you got to really know your limits, right? And from that, you could start really training intensely, because if you're wanting to build muscle and get stronger, you have to progressively overload yourself. So that means you have to train longer, you have to train heavier or more intensely, or overall everything, right? And so when I was progressively overloading my body, I knew my limits, but I didn't know how much, you know, how much I could handle at one given point or during the week, because progressively overload means you have to stack more weights, and yeah. And so when I try to progressively overload too quickly without gradually building up, because normally normal typical people would jump up like 20 pounds, but for us OI people, you have to really bump it up in like 5 pounds. Well, for me at least, it's like every 5 pounds I have to test it out and go from there, because it dramatically changes the weight. And so yeah, so as I'm progressively getting stronger, I really noticed that your body starts using less range of motion, and that is because the heavier the weight, the harder it is to move that body part, right? And so I've encountered so many injuries trying to do a full range of motion with a heavy weight, and that's not ideal. The ideal when trying to train full range of motion is to use light weights, or the weights that you could handle well. And so that is, for me at least, light weights. And so yeah, so you got to be cautious on what kind of weights you're using, how much weights you are using, and your range of motion plays a huge role. So your flexibility plays a role, your mobility plays a role. It plays a role for anyone and everyone, to be honest. Bodybuilders, powerlifters, anyone and everyone, elderly people. If you're not working out, if you're having mobility issues, you are prone to injury, no doubt about it, right? So that's that. Just easier way into weight training. I wouldn't dive into it too quickly, too heavily, unless you could really manage yourself well, meaning you know how to lift weights, you know how to handle if something were to go wrong, so on and so forth, right? But if you're a beginner and barely starting to work out and whatnot, and you need like the basic advice, here's the basic advice for your people. The number one thing I would recommend is to do pull workouts, and that is because pull workouts are an amazing um, resource to go about, because when you're in a pool, essentially there's no gravity playing, right? In that position, you're in water, and so it's easier to move around. You're you're not having as much stress on your bones if you're outside the water, right? Because for example, or for instance, when you're in the water, and when you're standing up in water, you can move around pretty easily, right? And so if you were outside the water, if you were to stand up, you would probably, well, I don't know how you would act, but it would be much harder for me to withstand all my body weight on my legs and whatnot. I'm able to stand up, don't get me wrong, but like being in a pool would help it much better because the water is different than being outside, right? And so it's a good way to exercise. If you're in a pool, find a therapy pool near you and go about that, right? But another good thing to go about is to do or to use resistant bands. Resistant bands are an amazing thing to use. They're resistant bands. Literally, you could like grab inner tubes and whatnot and use that as resistant band training. But yeah, so the resistant bands are ideal because for one, they're very light. For two, they're portable, and for three, the chance of hurting yourself is limited. I'm talking about like half of it, or like 90% of. Like you can't hurt yourself. Like virtually, you cannot hurt yourself with a resistant bands because they literally have like zero weight to it. And so if you were to like drop the resistant band on you, it wouldn't hurt. Resistant band has resistant um, type of force rather than weight where it just completely drops. So it's two different factors of training. It hits differently in your on your body. Your body will use whatever it could to build muscle. So you are going to build muscle using resistant bands, but you probably get a greater emphasis with weight training because weight training is much more demanding on your muscles, whereas resistant bands aren't. And so yeah, but from resistant bands is very versatile, meaning it has many purposes to it. You could use it for mobility training, strength training, bodybuilding, so on and so forth, right? There's so many uses to it, man. It's you have to implement it in your workout if you have OI. Not even mentioning OI for anyone in that case. A lot of people train in various ways. You know, people use chains, they use resistant bands, you know, so on and so forth. So it's very ideal for anyone and everyone, to be honest, right? So if you're very delicate, very fragile, I would go to a pool, find a therapy pool, you know, train in there, get your body moving, get the blood flow moving and whatnot. And then once you have progressed, or you could even do this on the same day, but use resistant bands. You know, you can even bring it with you in the pool and just tie it around the metal bars and whatnot, and just get your workout in there. That would be pretty ideal as well. But for weight training or whatnot, like I said, if you can handle it, you could. But if not, I wouldn't dive into it quickly because just trust. I wouldn't do that. But thanks for watching.